this edition of Leading in Uncertainty, a CEO's Perspective, we are delighted to have with us Pascal Radue, President and CEO of Hydro Solutions at GE Renewable Energy. Now, GE hydro turbines and generators represent more than 25% of the total installed capacity worldwide, and GE Hydro Solutions is spearheading the drive for renewables for a cleaner and better environment. Now, Pascal is headquartered out of France, but he's in lockdown with his family in Geneva, Switzerland. I've known Pascal since my time in Alstom and then in GE. We've worked very closely together and we've remained friends ever since. Welcome, Pascal. Now, Pascal, tell us, what is it like to be locked down in Switzerland?
Yeah, I think it's like in most places. First of all, you probably get to know your family a lot better than you thought you knew them. It's a bit of a social experiment as well. We all, spend a lot of time, much more time together than we normally do. I spend a lot more time with my family as I normally do. And frankly speaking, it's been really great to have probably conversations with the family that we've not had time to have before. A lot more time with each other, and I really, really appreciate to be frank.
So I know you're a global CEO. You travel the world a lot, but in your free time, you like sailing. Now, is that still possible in Switzerland, where outdoor activities are permitted or not?
Yeah, so outdoor activities are permitted as long as you don't, i.e. not more than with 5 people. And if you are with 5 people, you have to keep a 2-meter distance, so from each other at all times. So that obviously makes sailing on the same boat a little bit difficult. But we've been, I'm a father of 2 kids. I've got two young boys. They both are quite keen sailors, so they have gone out in their own little sailboats where they are basically on their own. So that's not a problem. I've been watching them, attempt to coaching them until I get fired. But yeah, we've been out. I've been out on my own on a small boat. So yeah, it's possible.
So let's switch to business. How's business been for GE Hydro Solutions during this pandemic?
Look, hydro is obviously a very much a long cycle business. So we haven't seen sort of a massive impact of people saying, we want to stop a project or we want to not go ahead with something. We haven't seen it's happened, but it's not a massive impact. For somebody like me who's traveled, who normally travels most of the week, it's been a real sort of grounding on showing me, do I really need to do all of that? Do I really need to do all that travel? Do I not work less efficiently if I do the travel? Can I not do many more things in the way we speak now? And I think especially when you know somebody like we know each other, there's absolutely there's no extra barrier fundamentally between 2 human beings or even more human beings working like that.
I get that. So that's great initiatives which you can do remotely with your teams. But talk me through about customer engagement. How do you keep up that same level of engagement with customers now that we're all working from home mostly?
Yeah, so I think customers are, customers which are existing customers in the same kind of way that we talk now. We know each other. We know a lot of customers already, and I think they understand and they subscribe, like the rest of us, to the need of doing this remotely. And I think the same goes for customers, what goes for us. We explore it. I was quite skeptical about it at the beginning. Some customers were skeptical, but once we've put it in place, I think we saw that, we gave it a go and it obviously worked. So from that point of view, I think we've had some great responses from customers who are very willing to do that. Where it gets a little bit difficult is to, when you meet somebody for the first time, sometimes a bit more human interaction is probably needed than can be done in this kind of environment that we're in now. But even though, I just think the human being is absolutely outstanding at kind of adapting. And I think as we go along, we will probably see more and more, us being much more comfortable as human beings, having the interaction that we have now, than we were before.
So Pascal, let's move on now to leadership. And we are managing at a very uncertain time. Now, to the leaders out there, what kind of skills, what kind of behaviors need to now come to the forefront?
The first behavioral skill, I don't know whether it's a behavioral skill, is a leader should be positive. I mean, there's no kind of, if a leader is all in doom and gloom and saying, all this uncertainty is gonna drive us all crazy or whatever, then it becomes a huge. This is not a behavior that a leader should show, in this time or any other time, for that matter. That's one thing I think is very important. The other thing is the drive or the encouragement for everybody coming from the leader to really manage and concentrate on what we can really influence. Because it's pointless trying to, guesstimate or think or be fearful of what may be or what may not be, and spend a lot of time doing that, rather than, for me, it's much more important that people really focus on things they can control. When I think about the wins we had in KL when we worked together, I mean, it was just an unbelievable team spirit and trust in each other. And it's literally, what I always liken it is when you play football and you play somebody a pass, and you don't even have to look whether that person is actually there. You just play it. You just play the ball, and somebody's going to be there. Somebody's going to catch you or catch the ball that you've taken. And when you made the goal at the end of the day, that you're gonna, it's not the guy who made the goal who's going to be the king. It's the whole team who's going to be the king. I think that was a game changer that sometimes in teams that has reappeared, but it was throughout a prolonged period in KL where this atmosphere was there. There was just a trust in each other. It was a blind trust at the end of the day, and a true sharing of success, where there was never somebody saying, it was me that I've done it, or it was never. And that was, if you think about a cool moment, it's I would have wished that moment lasted kind of an eternity. I was once this goes a little bit along the lines of believing in yourself, believing in, having a strategy and follow through with it, and not try to change because, somebody else changed something and you think you have to copy. There's what I never forget is there's a race where we had wings which changed constantly. we had winds that changed direction, changed the kind of strength. And in sailing, when you have that, you normally have a kind of an optimal sail for each of these winds. And if you're lucky enough to have these sails on board, you have the option of changing the sail every time. When the wind changes, you can change the sail, and arguably you're going to be quicker because you have an optimal sail. But the thing is, if it changes in quick successions, all the sail changes themselves will cause you to lose power, because the sail is your engine at the end of the day. So there was an interesting thing where we, for some reason, had a lot of sails on board in one race where we could match every wind change, we could match it. And we started, changing sails every 5 minutes or so. And there was another boat next to us who didn't change any sails. So they just kept to their setup, to their strategy and their sail. And at the end of the day, they were miles ahead of us after we tried to match every little fickle change of wind with a change of sail. They were much more efficient just sticking to their strategy, to their setup, and just going for that. And that, for me, was also very powerful in terms of, when you're a company, you have a strategy, and, there's a lot of things that outside will change. And maybe sometimes you have to adapt it slightly. But if you start to question that strategy every 6 months, then you become very fickle and you confuse everybody, and you'll never be efficient, in my view. And that goes along the lines of just believing in yourself and ultimately what you and your team can do.
So Pascal, you've said that this pandemic is a catalyst, and catalyst for a lot of change that's happening to us, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we view each other in the workplace. Now, you've advocated in every team that you've been in, every place that you've been, this concept of sustainable mindset change. Now, we know it's not easy to have a sustainable mindset change to a team, but do you believe that now we are forced to do it due to this pandemic?
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I'm convinced the human being, I think we know more or less from neuroscience that the human being gets sort of set up as the human being they are in the first, let's say 4 to 7 years of their lives. That's where we are fundamentally all set up. After that, to change something in the mindset or the base values will become very, very difficult. And is normally what we normally need is a kind of something external happening that really shocks, that really skews, that really shakes us in our foundations. And I think we can all reference to, the issues in 2001, September 11, the World Trade Center. I think a lot of people, I probably can still remember exactly where I was when I heard the news for the first time. And it's a kind of an external event that, normally forms us, pushes us to do something different, but it has to be something big. So for me, this pandemic is obviously something huge. So I think it will form us, and I think it will cause sustainable mindset change. Well, my dream was always to figure out a way to cause sustainable mindset change without this kind of external massive event. That's what I always was chasing, and that's obviously much, much more difficult. It's much, much more difficult, and it takes a long time for people to kind of see what the change can bring. And ultimately, again, it's a human behavior. Only when you really realize what a behavioral change, what benefits of a behavioral change can bring, will you reapply that same behavior in the future. Think of a movie like basically Apollo 13. Apollo 13, we all know this is this lunar lander mission which went horribly wrong. And if you look at, there's certain scenes in there. If you look at how they approached the subject of bringing this home, they had a calculation showing them that they would not make it home. And then they found a way by, absolutely micromanaging and overturning every single stone, questioning every single assumption they'd done before, to then finally get the outcome they needed. And I think these guys who've done that, they will do that now every time because they saw the result. They saw the result. They saw that, by doing this, you can actually achieve the result you're looking for. And I think that's the kind of, we have small events at work we sometimes go through, and I just try to promote those so it can cause this sustainable mindset change and the belief that you can actually do something different. And by doing something different, you get a better result.
Great movie. I loved Apollo 13. And my favorite character was, I think, Ed Harris, the guy at Mission Control that was calling all the shots. For me, that is the epitome of a leader.
Failure is not an option.
There you go. Failure is not an option.
Absolutely.
So jumping then to you being the CEO and the buck stops with you, there's going to be tough decisions to be made as we move forward during this uncertainty. Now, how would you go about having to implement some of the tougher decisions that you're going to be faced with as you move forward?
I don't think, about the implementation. I'm not so sure whether I'm going to change the way I implement things. I'm not sure going to change the way we are, coming to a decision. Because at the end of the day, when, for me, what is important for me is when I make a decision, I may or may not have at the outset a gut feeling of what that decision should be. But what I always make sure is then I test that. I test that with my team members. I test that with people that I think can help me in validating whether that decision is right or wrong. I don't think I would change that now. The same with the implementation of the decision itself. We have, when you implement the decision, I think you always have to be. You have to spend time, explaining why you're doing something rationally, and then you have to follow through, in a very structured way to make sure that decision is really implemented. Because often, you make a decision and it gets implemented to 50%, and then it's not really, having the outcome you desire. The only change I would say is the case here in these difficult circumstances in the outside is going back again to the human being. I'm convinced that any big corporation or any corporation for that matter has a level of social responsibility. I mean, we have a responsibility towards the human beings that we're working for. And it's, these human beings, the vast majority of those will have spent, hours, days, weeks and months and years working for a corporation, sacrificing their personal lives for it to a certain extent. I think it's in a situation like that, it's important that we as a corporation also recognize that when we take tough decisions.
Okay, so moving on to having a look at a bit of a crystal ball and trying to figure out what the new normal is going to look like and what kind of trends do businesses have to look for in the future. What's your take on that, Pascal?
The new normal will be a lot more interaction like we have now. Our willingness to entertain these interactions and much more over actually taking a plane and traveling somewhere. I think that's one thing. The other thing which is linked to that, which I think is a tremendous opportunity, which obviously we all have to think through, and it has to work for every person, but it has to work for every person in a different way, is this kind of concept of working from home. I think we should be much more, or we will be much more open as individuals to accept the concept of working from home. Because, again, it can, I think in families, in some families, this could be a real game changer for the way their family works. Especially I'm thinking of children being at home, or maybe you have to take care of some of your family members. Being at home can be, being able to be at home can be a real game changer.
So finally, Pascal, it's been fantastic. Any parting words, parting advice?
The one base value that I found always very, very helpful is just to remember, who we are as individuals, and be proud of that, and not try and be something else that you're not. I think don't try, in a crisis like that, don't just try and change change the way you are and what you believe in just because of something outside. Because at the end of the day, in the long run, you as individual, or we as individuals, are the way we are. I mean, we have a DNA and we are the way we are. And I think that makes it also, that makes the world also rich and basically allows us to come up with new ideas, to question ourselves, to question the status quo.
So in essence, to be authentic and be yourself. And I think that's what's going to pull us through. Absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely. So. Pascal, it was awesome talking to you again, as always. Thank you so much for being with us.